and get us started. So welcome to the SMART Way webinar series for nonprofit professionals. This is the first of our series, and really happy you all are here. I'm your host, Ellen Bristol. I'm president of Bristol Strategy Group, and our focus is on ways to manage your fundraising for greater impact. You already know all the skills of fundraising. So now let's put some structure around those skills and see how much your fundraising results improve. These webinars are short. We're going to try and keep them to half an hour or less. And each one will concentrate on a management practice or a couple of management practices to help you work smarter, not just harder, because believe me, I know how hard you all work. So in this program, we're going to discuss donor retention. And when we're done with the deck, I'm going to unmute everybody if you want to ask additional questions. So during the webinar, if you have questions or comments, please chat them to me and I can respond in the webinar, hopefully. Now, before we start, I want to ask you all a question. I don't know how to use polling on this particular platform. I will by the next one. But before we start, I'd like you all to answer this question in a chat. Are you raising as much money as you would like to? Yes, no, make me laugh, however you want to answer that. Are you raising as much money as you'd like to? No, 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 no. Of course not. All capitals, no. So I guess we're on to something with this program. So let's talk about donor retention. It's a hot topic, and there are tons of research. The Fundraising Effectiveness Project and Giving USA's annual study are just two. But in spite of all that research, we know that donor retention is really terrible. It's for 13 years, ever since the launch of the Fundraising Effectiveness Project, we've looked at the data on donor retention, and it still averages at around 40%, which means you're not raising as much money as you should be, and that weakens the impact of your mission. But what would happen if you raised retention? Let's go all the way and say, let's double it from 40% to 80%. The likelihood is you would double your income simply by retaining more donors. And when you have more money, guess what? Your mission has a stronger impact. You have a stronger impact on your mission. Maybe I said that inside out backwards. So I wanted to start out by talking about the lessons the best in breed organizations have shown us by their ability to focus on donor retention, or as I like to put it, to manage donor retention. So to start with, they save money. You've all heard this a million times. It costs somewhere between 5 and 10 times as much money, time, and effort to acquire one new donor as it does to get a second gift from a current donor, a second, a third, a ninth. Second thing is the return on investment for donors whom you retain from year to year translates into significantly more revenue, both because you get the gift and because your costs to acquire the gift are significantly lower. This one study I read said 5% more donors retain equals between 25 and 95% more income. Then there's the question of loyalty. Now, I don't hear us talking so much about loyalty as we talk about engagement, but in my book, they mean the same thing. Retained donors give more often, like every year, and they tend to give larger gifts. Plus, it's a little bit easier to upgrade them from whatever giving level they started at, because the best in breed organizations know how to retain not only the donor, but the donor's level of engagement. And finally, engaged and retained donors are in a very good position to produce referrals to like-minded philanthropists. And what does that mean to you? It means those leads are already warm. It's not a cold call, hey, mister, you want to give money to my cause? Oh, no, click. This is a relationship has been started for you by somebody else. And it doesn't cost you out of that limited pool you have of time, energy, and money. So what does that mean? Well, it leads us to the big fat secret to retaining donors. This is a huge secret. And like I said in one of our outbound emails to you all, this is a secret that's so obvious you'll be surprised you hadn't thought of it. The secret is, drum roll please, assign retention targets to your people. Now, what do I mean by that? A retention target is a type of key performance indicator, a KPI, or a metric, a measurement. Metrics, KPIs, performance expectations, whatever you want to call them, are underused in donor retention. When I've read the FEP study and the Giving USA study about donor retention, what I always find is the following. Donor retention is terrible. Do these tactics. Try those mechanisms. Experiment with these events, campaigns, what have you. But none of them have come out and said, tell your people they are expected to retain their donors. It seems so simple, but setting expectations like that really clarify to your fundraising team, which I know might just be you, what's expected. They add structure. And structure, especially in a process like raising money, structure's elusive. It's not obvious. You know the structure of managing a client's service delivery, but you can't quite see the structure of raising money. So when you add structure around donor retention, the effect is one of empowering and reassuring people so that they know what's expected of them. And it's also motivating. Let me give you a couple of examples. One for a big shop and one for a small shop. So we'll do with the big shop first. We're going to say Mary is a major gift officer who has an assigned portfolio of 100 people. 80 of them are current donors, and Mary's expected to acquire 20 new donors at an appropriate gift level during the course of the year. So here are the KPIs we're going to give to Mary, the key performance indicators. We're going to sit her down and say, Mary, by the end of the year, we want you to get at least the same level gift from 40 to 50 of your current donors, upgrade the balance of them to another higher level of giving, and acquire 20 gifts from this pile of prospects at such and such a size. Now, we haven't told Mary how to do it. We've given her the structure. like our little man with the bow and arrow shooting at a target. She has a target to shoot for. Now, for small, non-existent, and all volunteer shops, which is really most of us, you assign the KPI in a slightly different way. You're going to hold a conversation with staff, board, any other volunteer fundraisers. Those people can do a lot of good for you. And I'm going to talk more about how they can bolster your staff capacity significantly in a moment. So we're going to have a meeting or a conference call, and you're going to say, team, our donor retention rate is down to whatever it is. Let's say 40%. Let's all agree we're going to raise it from 40% to 60% this year. So we're going to assign ourselves the objective of getting all current donors to give again and renewing 20% of our lapsed donors. While we're at it, we want 20% of all of those guys to upgrade to the next level of giving. So if somebody's giving you $25 a year, let's see if we can persuade them to give you $50 a year. We did the calculations. This is me playing the role of the leader of the meeting. And if we achieve these targets, we're going to raise 80% more income. Is everyone on board? Asking that question is really important, because once everybody agrees to these targets, you're going to have to do a couple things. Keep track of it and let everybody know what your progress is like. Again, a little bit more on that as we move along. You always start out with the metrics first and figure out the tactics later, because that reduces guesswork and all the arguments over whose idea about tactics is better, which is one of the reasons I love metrics so much, because I hate those arguments. Now, what's really happening out there in fundraising land? Regrettably, picture's not good when it comes to using the wonderful management practice of establishing donor retention targets. This graph comes out of our leaky bucket study called Fundraising Down the Drain for 2019. We have been running the leaky bucket assessment for effective fundraising since 2011. We've got about 1,400 respondents from organizations of all sizes, sectors, and even countries. Every continent of the world has been represented. But look at what they're telling us. If we added up the top two bars here, no standards and we're encouraged, that's 76% of all of our respondents who really basically are hoping they remember to work on funder retention. About 17% have some kind of target for funder retention. Most of them, as far as we can tell, just have a monetary target. Raise X amount of income from retained donors. And a 12%, which is a relatively small minority, have the paired performance indicator. Number of funders retained plus amount of income from retained funders. Ooh, we have a typo there. It should say targets for numbers of retained funders. So I wanted to talk to you about this question. Is fundraising management, great fundraising management, great retention management, really as simple as this? And the answer is, well, yes. Simple in this case means clear, straightforward, and measurable. That doesn't mean it's easy to do, but if you put the structure in place, these are the practices you end up with. You start with assigning those famous KPIs. Every key performance indicator has at least two components: what you're going to measure and how much of it you want to achieve, which is sometimes referred to as the success target. So Mary, retain 40 to 50 of your current donors. That's both number of donors and what she has to do, retain. Now, assigning the KPIs is the start. Next thing we have to do is track progress. Use your CRM, use a spreadsheet, chisel it on a rock. I don't really care how you do it, but keep track of how you're doing. Actually, spreadsheets are perfectly fine. And review your progress against those targets regularly. I don't mean once a year or once a quarter. I mean at least once a month, maybe once every couple of weeks. Now, the part of this that's not simple, but it's very important, is to recognize that you have many retention mechanisms or tactics that you could employ. So when you're gathering these data, you also want to say, did the donor recognition event do more for us in terms of retention than the walkathon or whatever it is? And finally, choose additional tactics or revise current tactics based on the results you've been tracking. Now, I know you would all kill me if I didn't spend some of our time together talking about retention tactics. These are 4 that I find particularly useful, and they needn't be costly. Plus, they create, they're trackable, if I can coin a phrase. So let's start with skills training. First, I want to point out that the skills it takes to retain donors tend to be rather different from the skills that it takes to cultivate, acquire, and solicit new donors. So when you're looking for training or insights about how to improve your donor retention, make sure you scroll through to find out if they're going to, what they're for. And that's a little bit of a subtle issue. We recently had a client who had hired a new, highly qualified, or so they thought, major gift officer, and she bailed in a few months because she was a retention specialist, and nobody, including her, recognized how different her skills would need to be to acquire new donors in a new market. Training is available from innumerable places, including free. So make sure you're on all those listservs and scour the internet for training opportunities, and for free stuff, and invest in it too, because you can never overdo professional development. Then make sure you look at and test whether or not your team members who have obtained that training are putting it into play. Donor recognition events are often touted as a useful mechanism. I'm all in favor of them under certain conditions. There's a tendency to run events when we don't have to. There's a tendency to spend more money on events than we get out of them. And there's a tendency to lump all your fundraising objectives into a single event: acquisition, upgrade, retain, honor the influential people in the community, talk about our successes. It becomes overwhelming. But if it's right for you and your organization to do donor recognition events, pay attention to your profit And remember, one of my favorite mottos, it's what happens after the event that's most important, what kind of follow-up you do. I much prefer re-engagement campaigns to donor recognition events. They certainly have their place. A really fabulous and relatively low-cost, low-effort tactic for continuous donor engagement / retention is a dedicated newsletter, preferably an e-newsletter, because of course you are capturing every donor's email address, right? And send out a biannual or quarterly, very simple donor update where you track your organization's progress in terms of results you've had and thank donors for their involvement. You don't make the ask here, although you can give them a link to your online giving page. But the re-engagement campaign is not an opportunity to ask for more money. It's an opportunity to thank everybody and report on progress. Because donors want to know how the money they gave you is being used. You know, your $5 donor doesn't want to know which Staples you went to buy a box of paper clips, but they do want to know their gift helped you achieve whatever your mission is. My all-time favorite donor engagement or donor retention tactic is stewardship. I like this approach the best for a reason that many of you may not have thought about. If you really do stewardship right, it's labor intensive. Now, I know and you know that everybody is chronically understaffed unless you're Harvard, say, or the Mormon Church, which has 350 people in their philanthropy department. But your board members, other donors, any other volunteer fundraising people, and even staff can find the time to connect with a donor, report on progress, and thank them. The formula is report, report, and thank, report, report, and thank. And somehow the ask happens automatically. So get your non-fundraising team, your board, and your volunteers to have a phone conversation. Imagine what would happen if every single donor, no matter how small, got a phone call at least once a year from someone who said, I'm on the board or I'm on the staff, and I personally want to thank you for giving us the gift. And as a result of that, look at what we've accomplished. And furthermore, tell me about yourself. Now, one of you asked me a question. If we were to do a recognition event, what type of follow-up activities would you recommend? Let me answer that quickly. I would recommend a personal follow-up to all attendees, just for the opportunity to start a dialogue. I wouldn't go right to the ask. I would do things as follows. Give me your feedback on the event. You've been a loyal and donor to us for some time. Why is it important to you to keep on supporting us? Tell me about yourself. It's a wonderful way to ask. When you're asking questions like that, you're going to start to really focus the way you write about your organization on your website and develop language for your email marketing and social media posting, because you're going to find out direct from current donors what they like about you and what their motivations for giving may be. Motivations for giving are a key element in understanding who's your ideal donor. I hope that's helpful. So get with the idea of stewardship. So I'm going to recap. Remember, I told you this was going to be a short program. Okay, the first thing to sum it all up is the importance of donor retention cannot be overstated. We recently analyzed the retention rate for a client of ours, and they have a challenging mission because it's international. But the fact is, if they had, we looked at their data over a 3-year period, and it went down from $1 million to $750,000 to less than $250,000 over a 3-year period. And we further analyzed it and realized that if they had just gotten exactly the same size gift, and some of those gifts were as small as $10, they had gotten the same size gift from every donor who had given 3 years ago, and then every donor who started giving 2 years ago, by the 3rd year, they would have doubled their income from year 1. So instead of raising $1.5 million, they would have raised $3 million over the time. The next thing is make sure you assign key performance indicators and you write them down in a way that's visible to everybody on the team, including volunteers. You may not know what that key performance indicator should be. You might question, should it be this, should it be that? Don't worry about it. Come up with something that seems realistic and adjust as you move forward. When you make your performance expectations clear and visible, people will do what you expect them to do. And finally, no, that's not finally, we're at the 3rd of 4 items. Track progress against those KPIs. See what's working, see what isn't working, adjust your outreach tactics accordingly, which is the 4th topic. Analyze and modify retention tactics based on data. If you can do all of those things successfully, or if you can do them a little bit and get better and better at it as you go along, you will be managing donor retention for your benefit. So this is the end of our deck, and I just want to encourage you to improve donor retention with our methodology, Fundraising the SMART Way. And please visit our website at bristolstrategygroup.com. Now, before the day is over today, you're all going to get an email that has a PDF of the slide deck, so these links will be live, and a link to the recorded webinar, which will be up on YouTube. So I'm going to unmute everybody. Oops. Why did it do that? And how do I unmute you all? Here's a way to do this. And be happy to take any final questions you may have. Oh, somebody has asked a question about gifts in memoriam, in honor of. Nobody's, they shouldn't be left, okay, if everybody will unmute. Gifts that are tributes probably should not be left out of retention if you have a way to connect to another member of the family. If the bequeather, is that a word, has left this in your will, find out if there's anyone else who is interested in perpetuating the legacy of that individual. If there's not, then I would leave that gift out of retention. because we will lose some donors to attrition. They lose their money, they die, they lose interest in you. But for the most part, you're going to have a lot more folks in your database that have not given tribute gifts. Any other comments or questions anyone would like to make before I bring this to a close? So our goal is to provide you with really powerful fundraising management chops. And we're going to be running these webinars about once every 3 weeks. So thanks so much for your attention. Don't hesitate to email me if you have additional questions that you don't want to share. Oh, we have another chat. Oh, I already answered that one. What did I miss here? Oh, foundation development people. Oh, that's really cool. Let's take that one offline. Email me. That's a little bit tricky, but I think the idea is just the same. If you're a foundation that makes grants, but you also raise money to enhance your pool of giving, you need to do the same thing that you would if you were a direct service delivery organization. And I look forward to your email. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. And I'm now going to end our meeting. See you all next time.